Hey, all you happy lost souls. Happy holidays to everybody. And if you're new to the channel, I see that I've got some new subscribers out there and some comments out there. Thank you so much for finding it, or thank the YouTube algorithms for working and connecting. Um, but really, my channel is kind of strange. It has a lot of my music and then my archaeology and my research project. That involves ancient humans in North America and a lot of the untold story, the stuff that goes back past that 13,000 year mark, the stuff that American archaeology really doesn't want to talk about or denies existing. It's slowly changing that paradigm as the older folks that created this paradigm kind of die off and newer minds and open minds start seeing things. The last video was kind of about all of the aluminum oxide, sapphire, and ruby that we find at these sites. And for making things more clear, all of the stuff that we're going to talk about today is Pennypack Creek or Pennypack Basin related finds. That's where most of the sapphire and garnet is. We have a lot of garnets. So these are garnets over here. We get this crazy, this is Wissahickon, this is not Pennypack, but this is a crazy type of garnet. It's a Wissahickon garnet complex with Wissahickon schist and these big chunks of garnet crystals in there. We get a lot of these crazy types of garnet. This is a type of garnet, they call this old garnet. This is garnet with in a complex essentially. This stuff does have some value to it. I just bring it to show you the geology. We even get these huge pieces of coral. Now what's weird is I live up in the hills in Willow Grove pretty much. And during the Cambriatic period, millions of years ago, there's a shallow tropical ocean that pretty much covered the whole earth. But the high points, such as where I live, they were sort of the beaches, and then the hillsides to this day were the ancient coral reefs of the past. So like Copper Beach down in Abington is along the same line. And if you go into a backyard on a hillside and do a little investigating, you'll find big hunks of fossilized coral, like this big piece of fossilized brain coral. Now, I don't know, this could be about 60 million, 30 million years back, a long, long time ago. It's a fossilized piece of life, coral. And coral is fascinating by itself. But these minerals here from the Pennypack, these are all samples from the lost silver mine, the mine connection. I'm so confident in knowing where the locations of both subterranean entrances to these ancient mines and these open pit quarrying sites along the creek are that I can confidently say that the lost silver mines of Acadia and lost gold mines of the Wissahickon are really in the Pennypack. Here's a piece of almost pure silver ore. These are all just samples taken from a couple of the silver ore sites that reacted to an acid test, red, so you get a lot of silver in this. And even bigger pieces of stuff like this have a lot of silver in them. There's a lead and silver sample. If you find lead, silver, and gold, they're all kind of next to each other on the periodic table. So if you find a lot of lead in an area, you're going to find silver in all likelihood. And then when you find a lot of these garnet-rich areas, and then you get into these areas where there's a ton of ancient activity, both spiritual, both not mechanical, but we would say industrial, these workshops along the creek. And you've heard me mention these things called ghost trees. Ghost trees in the Northeast are sycamore trees. And just take notice, especially in the fall when all the leaves are off, that every creek crossing you go over in your car, even to this day, you'll see these big white ghost trees right by the crossing points of the creek, growing right next to the bridges. You'll see them marking the driveways of really old houses from the 1700s. Some of these spidery, large, massive ghost trees along the creek could be 400 to 600 years old. Very, very ancient. Now, why these are important is because of a correlation, a pattern I made after doing this for a very long time. These trees grow quickly. Their seeds will float down a creek. They will grow in a desert. They will grow in a swamp. They have tons of uses, mainly for kayak or canoes and dugout type water vessels. The wood was used. The vegetation, these pods, these spiky pods that grow on the sycamore, can be used for fever treatment, for pain. They could also make you throw up a lot. Something called Jamaican vomiting syndrome can be caused by the neurotoxins and toxins in these pea pods. The sycamore tree is a type of maple tree. The tree also can bolt. So this tree can lose a limb, and if that limb falls into the ground, that limb can take root and grow another tree. The tree was known as the tree of divinity by the Native Americans. It's divine. It reaches up to the gods, to the heavens, these ghost trees. All of the quarry sites are marked by these trees, and maybe burials too. But what's interesting is if you look at an overhead view of these places and you see where all these big white patches are, where these ghost trees are, they were also used as landmarkers. It's way easier to find where the good places are to cross in a swamp. They mark the areas of production because when you clear a lot of trees and knock them down, these are going to grow back quickest in that cleared area. And they're also being reproduced and regrown for their industrial use as well as their spiritual meaning. They could have been also planted at burial sites or part of some sort of ritual that involved cremation or burial at these deep pools. Now, because we have a lot of sapphire in the area, aluminum oxide, it means we have a lot of underground kind of caverns or places that are getting isolated, free from silicates, and being heated up to 5,000 degrees in between that area over time, producing all these different colored types of sapphire and ruby. Of course, if you know, a red sapphire is a ruby, a red piece of aluminum oxide, and it means that the aluminum oxide was exposed to trace elements of chromium and chromate during its formation to get these red ruby types. If it's got sulfur or other sulfur oxides that it's being exposed to, or hematite or iron-rich oxides, you're going to get yellow sapphire. This crazy gold sheen sapphire, these are formed when you get hematite, magnetite, titanium oxide, all this stuff occurring in one place, and you get the starring from all the inclusions in it, the striping. You can see some of the blue sapphire in it. Now, the blue sapphire and these color-changing sapphires, like when you get certain light on it and whatnot, will change color. So you get like it'll change to like this more of this purplish color when light gets on it. And if you got different intensity lights, you can really see the blues starting to come out in that sapphire as they're color changing with different spectrums of light, and you get the different light on those unheat treated natural sapphires. And the blue is because of ilmenite or titanium oxide being exposed to trace elements of titanium oxide when the corundum is forming. All of these are corundums. This back here, ugly thing, might be the world's largest ruby. Anyway, what I wanted to really get into is these white ghost trees. And if you're into hunting for this stuff and you see these by a creek and you see a deposit of stone nearby, go look through that stone bank and you'll find all kinds of neat things. These areas were areas of ritual and belief. I mean, look at this one here. This is a crazy artifact here because this is both red and blue sapphire on one stone, like cut dead in half. And it's still got its shape, its faceted, natural diamond hexagon looking shape. But we get light on this thing, and you know, you can really start seeing some of the blue come out in it. And I call it the Americana because you get like this half blue, half red. So it's a ruby and blue sapphire all in one stone. It's very rough. I mean, I know what they are. I can identify them as materials, but I don't know their value, as opposed to, you know, how valuable they are as far as a gemstone, because there's all different degrees of quality in these things, and there's really rough sapphire, black sapphire, really dark blue sapphire. This is black sapphire, and that stuff used in sandpaper. But then you can really see some of these matrices where the ruby is running through rock, which is kind of really neat. Now this is penny pack that you find a lot of the garnet, and you can find a lot of cool garnets in the Wissahickon and even some of the aluminum oxides. These creeks, they kind of overlap in geology. The Wissahickon creeks got even crazier geology because a lot of parts of the mantle of the earth got exposed and then cooled rapidly, forming different kinds of elements and minerals that you don't really see anywhere else. What I'm saying is there's older people was working with these sapphires and making little turtle effigies out of yellow sapphires, making these hammers and pecking tools and knives out of sapphire. And then when the Clovis culture kind of moved in over top of these older quarries that looked to be kind of Solutrean, or this mystery people that we don't really know about, older people in America, leaving tools behind like this, which are very Solutrean shaped tools. Older than Clovis, we'll put it to you that way. And then all the way up into the woodland period, when you find things that are, stemmed and that look more of what you're used to seeing. But I appreciate all you guys that have reached out and found the channel. Stay tuned. I know this stuff is all kind of just rough yet. I hope to put out something professional. It takes a lot of work. And I'm a one-man team who does not get funded. I'm really not great at reaching back out on comments. I'll try my hardest. You can DM me, direct message me at Instagram at HappyLostSouls27. If you have something more serious or something you definitely want to communicate about. I get too many comments. There's a lot of negative too. I just don't feel like going through it all. But I do see a lot of new subscribers and people that have found similar things, and I am certain that this stuff is everywhere, because I am certain that there is a much older group of people that was inhabiting and living here for thousands of years before the next oldest thing that we think is the oldest, the 13,000 year mark, that Clovis, 10,000, 11,000 BCE marker. Whereas this stuff, we're looking at more of that 17 to 20,000 BCE marker. So we're looking at 20 to 23,000 years, and then there's this period where, something bad happened, some cataclysm, something worldwide happened. I'm not going to sit here and say that these were Atlanteans or these were some kind of crazy advanced race. I would further say that they're more Denisovan. I think that we're going to find that the South American connection is way deeper. I think most of the Americas is populated from the south up, from Polynesia and from places such as even Australia. You're going to find out, because a lot of Denisovan DNA markers go back to Aboriginal, the original people from Australia. And who knows, maybe in some ancient point, Australia was where, or the South Pole, Antarctic, was way more inhabitable, and it was lush, and there were civilizations there. But all part of this, there was definitely, humans went back way further than we give ourselves credit for. There's definitely a lot of amnesia in our own story, a lot of parts that were, history got broken up, where things didn't get written down, where terrible things were happening. I mean, even on, after the death of Christ, on the common era side of things, like I think it was the year 543, something like that, was one of the worst years ever to be a human in recorded history. There was literally no sun for 5-6 year period. Everything died. And then there was another crazy disaster. Something happened that we wrote about in our Bible during the Bronze Age, when the collapse of the Bronze Age happened. Some people think it's economic. Some people think it's geological or natural disaster related, or geopolitical related. Depending on what structure or who in charge is looking at the past information from whatever angle or whatever paradigm they're viewing it through, they're going to interpret it different. Some people will interpret the collapse of the Bronze Age as a material collapse. Better material took over, and then the economic structure collapsed because the power structure was linked to this material. Bronze fell short of metal, metal took over, iron took over. Some people say no, it was, something natural, a natural disaster, a drought happened, people got displaced, and I more likely think it's something natural disaster related, like a volcano, because the Egyptians were talking about all these crazy plagues, like the Nile turning red from blood, which that can happen if carbon monoxide vents open up under the ground from volcanic activity and leach into the water. They can also create pyroclastic flumes that pick up all the frogs and then rain them back down. There's a lot of stuff that volcanoes can explain that the Bible's describing. So yeah, I think we've been plagued by that, and all these disasters have formed these broken pieces of amnesia in our history, of our own history as humans. But America is really lost because we're fighting this crazy paradigm constantly that, people were only here 13,000 years back and forward. The Clovis culture was the first Stone Age was the first man. They all came from the Berigian Passage. They all migrated when the Barren Strait was frozen and they could get through that land pass. No, it was still way easier. Neanderthals had boats. That's why we find Neanderthal bones and burial sites in caves on Greece, off of the mainland, from Germany, from Neander Valley, because they did have boats made of seal skin, similar to the Solutreans. People were traveling, and it was way easier to travel across water and through rivers than it was over land. Think about it back then. There's giant animals that can kill you. There's no roads. There's giant mountains and an ice sheet that's 2 miles thick that you have to overcome. Do you think it's quicker that way, or do you think it's quicker to get lucky on a floating piece of ice and have an okay, decent watercraft that you're hunting seals with accidentally get stuck on a piece of ice that automatically gets carried over to here in 4 weeks anyway, in time, on the Gulf Stream, and it dumps you right out in what is now Jersey, Delaware, Virginia area. And if you stay on it longer and it circulates and starts heading back to where you came from, you'll circulate up north all the way to what is now Midwest Pennsylvania, which at the time, during the last ice age, was the North Pole. So the ice stopped about halfway through Pennsylvania. The rest was habitable. Anything north was inhabitable, 13,000 years and back, because the ice sheet was there. So yeah, I think there was a convergence of people that came on boat and on land. They met, they probably made it, assimilated with one another. But the question is, who was that North American Neanderthal? Who was the Denisovan in North America? Who was the original person? Well, we don't know, and I don't even think the Solutreans, whose stuff is about 20,000 years, who make this diamond type stuff and real thin stuff, and the people that were working with the sapphire, I don't think they were the oldest. I have stuff that goes back thousands of years past them. That's in a lower layer. That's 60,000, 100,000 years old. That's definitely more Neanderthal. Stuff like this over here. These chert pressure flaking tools, this crazy obsidian razor. These are all found in the penny pack. This crazy old, this is actually fluted. It's like more of a Folsom type point. Part of it's chipped off, but the tie down is still there. It was heat treated. It's magnetic. It's some kind of magnetite spearhead. We get this worship of this bird or this snake, and I think that's slightly newer. We get turtle worship. We get a lot of turtle heads. We get the leaving of specialty weapons and ritualized things like you see over in Bronze Age Europe. We get these tinier points that look more Mesolithic. Like when you're coming out of the Stone Age into the first metal working periods. We get seal iconography and like the side profile of a swimming seal etched in here, and then when the fire or flame hits it, it's literally multiple seals diving. And along with these tool sites, we get these fossilized bones, like they're butchering animals. to people who say these are just rocks. We find axes and effigies that are newer, that could be more year zero forward through the Beaver Wars. And we get these enameled artifacts that are enameled in red and enameled in black and white. The color is the spirituality of war with the Native Americans, especially the Iroquois, which the Susquehannock were related to in some capacity, even though they fought the Iroquois. Their dialect was Iroquoian, most of it. This unknown people, the Susquehannock. But anyway, I kind of just want to keep current, throw videos out. This stuff here is actually not sapphire. The reason I put this here is it's found in the same layer, so the people that are using these sapphire tools and effigies are also leaving these diamond type pendants and triangles, and I feel like that's the geological shape of what these things look like. Like if I take a rough sapphire, it's very diamond-like. It looks like a diamond. You know, it's diamond-shaped. Are they finding the things in this area and then leaving these things as a token back for taking the stuff? Like they're viewing this material as like a god or a special divinity, and their worship. And we see this water worship in pagan traditions all the way back through the Iron Ages in Europe and whatnot. Similarities. And this is another type of sapphire. This is another gold sheen sapphire. I have a couple of these gold sheen sapphires. Some of these I thought were petrified wood at first, but then figured out what they were with careful observation under high-powered magnification. And testing the hardness and things like that. And you see these little cutters and like sanders out. I've been trying to polish some of the semi-precious stone just to kind of see what they look like, see how clear I can make them and whatnot. I don't ever put anything or touch any tool to anything that I deem artifactual or anything like that. So I don't want anybody being like, oh, it's just shaping the rocks with the tools next by. No, I'm just working on some of these rough rubies, polishing them the best I can. But even with these really rough materials and some of these synthetic carbides and stuff, the sapphire aluminum oxide is so hard it just rips through the sandpaper. So it does polish and whatnot and brings out some of the transparency. But it being an opaque stone anyway, and being a lot of it being color transformative, and like some of it's rougher, you get this gold sheen, but you also get blue and red, and you can literally see where the aluminum oxide was exposed to different trace materials: titanium oxide, chromium, and chromium looks like you can see it forming in the crevices and craters of this big piece of ore. Now, we don't really know what this ore is. I feel like it's some kind of cobalt because it's so blue. It's very heavy. It almost looks like lead, but it looks like where lead and silver have kind of met. And you see that giant black hunk in that one nodule right there? That is chromate or chromium. And that's the trace mineral that'll give us ruby when it interacts with the aluminum oxide. It makes reds. We even see like garnet and ruby running through mica, which is really rare. And some of this is also mercury. You get a lot of cinnabar back there as well. So all these materials were important ritually to ancient humans, period, not just ancient Native Americans, but ancient humans. And whoever the ancient Native Americans were, we don't know, a bunch of different people and a bunch of different things blending over time. I just want people to open their minds to say, hey, there's definitely stuff in America older than 13,000 years, and this could drastically change the story of global humanity. What if after we figure out a little more about South America and we strip back all of the forests with LiDAR and we see the amazing amount of building and amazing amount of societal structure and cities and metropolitan areas, and you'll realize the entire South American rainforest is just an just an overgrown plantation, essentially, an overgrown garden of humanity. And a lot of it had to do with exposure to Europeans and being wiped out by smallpox. There's also a natural disaster in that area right in the 500s, just when the whole world went dark, a enormous eruption down in Central America. I think Ecuador was a big volcano then, causing these volcanic winters, and and there was also massive volcanoes occurring in the area of Greenland and Iceland, in the northern areas at the time. And we don't know if it also could have been a comet hitting. There was some evidence of that as well. So that's in the ice core drilling, and we'll find more information out about all these different disaster points. But you see just a ton of human activity in these quarry sites. And I mean, like I always say, you're only seeing 1/20th of what I have. These drawers are all filled with artifacts, all filled with tomahawks, axes, knives, blades, all from different time periods, fossils, agricultural material, hammers, maces, all from the Pennypack, the Wissahickon, and the Neshaminy. But like I said before, about 85-90% is from the Pennypack, because that's where a lot of my research comes from. Anyway, if you love the channel, share it. If you don't. If I wasted your time, sorry. If I didn't and you found it, great. Please subscribe, spread the word, be happy. Again, if you have something that you really want to share with me, and you want to reach out to me, just direct message me on Instagram, Happy Lost Souls 27. Okay, have a great one. Have a great holiday. Love you all, and peace out.